Hello? I have never used, I don't think I've ever used StreamYard a day in my freaking life. So I have no clue what the heck is going on. I wanted to see how it works today, but I didn't know how to highlight comments any other way than StreamYard. There's just no good way. No good way to do it. I also forgot to do this ahead of time and publish the video. Why does YouTube require this? Used to this. You think I would be by now, but I sure am not. Anyway, say hello. Oh, welcome in. We're talking about tiny tears. I don't know how to have an image. It's supposed to be simpler than OBS. I don't understand. It's working okay because I can't hear any of it. So if it all sounds good, I'm just gonna continue. So for Tiny Tears book club last month, the book was Heavy Ocean. And it's a horror novella, and I don't think it is quite exactly what I was expecting it to be. I really just thought it was going to be about the ocean, but of course it was about, I don't even know, a mixture of ocean and space, and I guess that makes sense, given the cover, but it really wasn't what I was really expecting at all. We have two brothers who seem to have quite a complicated history with each other, and they're in adulthood now. We get little glimpses of their childhood. As they're in adulthood, we know that someone's been a little reckless for one reason or another. And Jamie, who's the younger of the brothers, goes to visit Eric, who has just moved to Hawaii at some point in his life. And of course, he gets there, and things are immediately a mess. And we know that, like, there's some weird stuff that had happened in Eric's past. We know he's impulsive. And the things that happen from there absolutely spiral. And I don't know if I was ready for how much action was just, it was just action. There is no time to breathe within this little novella. I kept checking it, I'm like, how many pages are left? How many things can happen? Hi, hello, how are you? I was just really shocked at how many things were just happening over and over. Oh my, what is supposed to be distorted? No. Is it? StreamYard and
Oh, wait. Oh my god, have I just been talking and it just oh my god. This is fine. I would rather work in OBS any day than whatever's happening here. I don't think anyone can redeem voice distortion here. Oh my god. Hi, Friday. It's fine. It's fine. You know, I was like, this should be easy peasy. They make StreamYard. Like, it's supposed to be for anybody. I'll just come in here and everything will work fine, you know? Clearly not. Clearly not. Clearly not how StreamYard works. I feel overblasted, unsaturated, but my eyes, I feel like, are glimmering with hope today that things will go well. I'm buffering like hell on my screen. Hamster voice. Oh my god. No access today. Well, I see that everything's going great. Well, I always forget that YouTube, like, you need to post your live stream ahead of time, and I totally forgot about that until I went to go live, and I'm like, I probably should have done that like 3 weeks ago, but I'll learn next time. I'll learn next time. Hi, Leanne. Hello. Well, you know what? It's fine. It's fine. Everything is fine here, you know? From the top, make it drop. Do I sound okay now? And do I sound fine? Because I don't know what filters. I don't know what filters that StreamYard uses. Okay, well, we'll just have to remember to add a comment to the recording that says skip the first 3 minutes because a hamster has taken over stream. Just skip the first 3. Okay, awesome. Sounds great because I'm like, I think StreamYard adds a filter, but I don't know if I could find a way to highlight comments on OBS. There used to be a way, and then they got rid of it. Don't skip the first 3 minutes. No, do it. No, I can't imagine someone showing up for like, they're like, oh, I missed, the book discussion. They show up and it's just a girl talking about it in a hamster voice for 3 minutes. And I just imagine them being like, this ain't it. This is the dystopian world that we have entered. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the amount of tech issues that I have as someone who would now consider themselves a semi-professional streamer. Next time, no, and I'll go back to watch it and I'll just be like, oh my god. I just feel like no one could understand it. Selling point for this, but yeah. 30 minutes of hamster. That's what everyone's here for, is just 30 minutes of hamster. It's fine. It's fine. It's so weird because that shouldn't even be on. It shouldn't even be on. I don't know why it was on. Unless someone like redeemed it at some point. Yeah, just download it, cut it out, and re-upload it. That might be what I have to do because what in tarnation? Okay. Anyway, 30 minutes of hamster voice. I love your description of just 30 minutes of hamster voice. Exactly. All the ASMR girlies will love it, I feel. It will be great. It'll be great. All right. For real though. Now that I have to go back and do my spiel all over about the actual book. Heavy Oceans wasn't what I was expecting. Even though I was like, it's weird because I thought it was going to be just about the ocean, but then we have this mixture of space, which totally makes sense based on the cover. But apparently I'm not good with context clues. Go get some coffee and food. Do it. Do it. Clearly I'm not good with context clues here. So it was interesting. I wasn't expecting as much action as there was. There was no time to breathe, which might have been an intentional choice, I feel. Um, I also went into it. I go into most horror novellas pretty much knowing nothing going in. Actually, that's the way I prefer horror. I don't know how others feel. I know it could be hard, especially if you're someone who is looking specifically for like trigger warnings and whatnot. And I know like I don't tend to vibe with like paranormal horror, but for the most part, I enjoy going into horror knowing pretty much nothing. I think that makes the experience feel more genuine and authentic to like a scare. It's hard to become scared when you're like anticipating the scare sometimes. It's like, I don't know, you go into a haunted house and you know you're going to get scared and it loses a little bit of it. Faculty the thing and know what you yes. When you start X-Files rewatch, I love that. Yeah, when you don't know what to expect, I feel like it can be scarier. And also less of a letdown in a way because sometimes you can like hype yourself up. The amount of times I've gone to see like a horror movie and I get like really anxious about it only to later be like, well, that wasn't so bad. So I don't know. There's just something about doing it that way. So for anyone who might need a reminder, because I know a lot of people read this the moment I announced it and we're done within a day, and that was a month ago. So anyone who might need a reminder, just quickly, this is a horror novella that follows two brothers, Jamie, who is the younger, and Eric. And they've come from a complicated past in their childhood. Eric has a seemingly sleepwalking issue. He does just weird things in his sleepwalking days, and their father has left them. He was quite abusive, and this has left quite a stain on them in their lives. So now they're adults, and Jamie decides to go visit Eric, who has moved to Hawaii spontaneously. That's what he does. We know at this point that Jamie has had a fight with his partner, who is also the mother of his child, and he is just feeling really complicated. He needs to go see his brother about this. Immediate chaos ensues from this moment. Immediate. This is where you begin to lose the ability to breathe throughout the rest of the book. A murder happens right off the bat. Here I am thinking, oh, there's this cute little girl at the bar. That's going to come back at some point. You know, something fruitful will happen here. It will be like the light at the end of the tunnel, possibly. And I know in horror novellas, like, you don't have a lot of time to do things, but my God, right off the bat, we are entrenched in a murder. We are now entrenched in like a cover up. And I do feel like it was a very good choice to be from Jamie's point of view in this moment, because we are also so caught up that when Jamie has those moments to be like, okay, oh my God, I'm doing I'm doing this for my brother. I'm now like involved in a murder. I'm helping my brother cover up a murder because that's like, it's so in the moment, and this is what I'm doing, and this is my brother. And I do feel like it was a good to be from Jamie's point of view, because we are also there. We're like, okay, what do we do now, and how do we do this? And like, there are no rational steps that take place. And as a reader, I feel like you don't have the time to rationalize it either, because everything is moving so quickly. How on earth, though, they thought they were going to get away with leaving one body and taking another, I don't know. I don't know what the thought process was there. And the amount of people that stopped by and were like, oh my, how's everyone doing over here? And they're just like holding a man who has his neck slashed. And they're like, he's just really drunk. You're telling me they were covered in blood. They literally talked about the fact that they were like covered in blood, and no one was like, something's amiss there. I was more stressed in those moments than I think in any other part of the book. I also thought it might be about Jamie realizing that his brother isn't who he used to be. Yeah, Weekend at Bernie. It's yeah. The other guy, they were hoping that, but it was just like, wouldn't they be like, there's blood everywhere? I don't know. It was just like such a weird situation to start off with. Like, I know it was supposed to be the tipping point, but I was so stressed and like the thought process of it all. But yes, I also thought this, except for the more we learn about Jamie and his relationship to Eric, the more I realized that he knew exactly who Eric was. Eric was impulsive, and he is just, he has no rational moments. He's just constantly doing the next thing that comes to his mind. And they explained it pretty well later on when he's talking about how Jamie is like, I think Eric has two voices in his head. I think that he's a good guy. He has this good voice, but there's also this other voice in his head that is constantly winning. That's like, do this bad thing, do this bad thing, do this bad thing. And that is the voice that is winning out because it's exciting and it's new and it's thrilling. And I don't think Jamie understands it completely, but we do, knowing what we know, that Eric has gone through something as a child. And it's interesting to me that Jamie forgets about the fact that Eric went sleepwalking one night and disappeared, literally disappeared, and then reappeared by morning. And it's interesting that Jamie has like completely blocked this out of his memory, which I guess in an unrational sense, maybe you would. And so we know that Eric has been waiting for something to take him at any given moment. So yeah, why not listen to that irrational voice? It's like, just do the bad thing. Keep doing what's the next exciting thing, because he doesn't know when he's going to go. So to me, like, that made sense as to why he was constantly irrational all the time, because to him it didn't matter, because tomorrow could have been the day, or that in the next hour could have been the time of when he was going. And I think it's also why he doesn't settle. I do think the fact that they were abused as children does talk. I do think that is part of why they also didn't settle. But I think it is a good reasoning of why Eric didn't ever settle, because and that's why he never let anyone get close to him. Just thought he was very impulsive. Yeah, I think there's more to it in that, like, he's been waiting for this moment to happen. And we get that moment as a child where he was like actively looking forward to it because he was in a bad situation. And here he's now older, and he's not necessarily in a bad situation, except for the ones that he continues to put himself in because he doesn't want to be in a good situation, because being in a good situation will make it hard. So he continues to put himself in bad situations so that when the time comes, he's no longer looking forward to it, but he knows it's coming, kind of deal. So he continues to put himself there because to him, like, it's easier to be bad than to be good. Yeah. That's how I was looking at it. Just thinking of like, because it wouldn't really make a lot of sense, I guess, for him to, I don't know, like, he's just so willing in the moment. And, like, the impulsiveness and constantly being on the go just feels like you're running from something, and we think it's the abuse, but we see that Jamie hasn't done that. And yes, they could be 2 very different characters, and that could be the way that they're dealing with it, but I do think that there's just, that other layer of, like, he's been waiting for this moment to come kinda deal. And unfortunately, he has managed to drag the only people around him into it. So, that's that. Okay, now I feel like I'm delving too deep already. I feel like I'm delving too deep. I would love to know what everyone's, like, first impressions were upon reading it, because I know it wasn't quite what I expected. I wasn't expecting a black hole in the middle of the ocean. But once it was there, I was like, "Oh, yeah, like, we're gonna be suspended somewhere." Like, that makes sense to me, and I wasn't expecting, though, the suspension between water and space. Part of me was just thinking that they were just gonna be suspended into, like, another dimension or something, which in a way, I guess maybe they were. Um, but then as we got further into it, I don't know if anyone else does this. Do you ever think about how a book could end, and your idea of it is, in your opinion, a better ending than what you get? And then you're a little disappointed. You just wish you could be, like, in the editing room or something and being like, "But what if we did this instead?" Because I did have one of those moments, especially when it came to talking about, like, this is a new life and the perfect circle of things, so, there was that. Got stuck on what position the boat was in the hole looking up at the ocean as a wall, or was the boat upside down? I also sometimes this is something I get hung up on, especially when it comes to, like, details. I'm really bad with time. If you start talking about timelines in a book, I get really hung up on it. And it can happen too when you think about, like, positions of things. I had a hard time envisioning because they were like, the ocean was above them, but the sky was underneath of them, and it's weird because they were talking about, like, they could see the stars underneath of them, but they could also see clouds underneath of them. So there was clearly distance, enough distance. So are they like suspended in between these two things? And also, just how did gravity work in a way, because they were facing upwards, but the rain was coming down onto them. So there was still like this gravitational pull type of thing. But then they were also in a dome. So it was very hard to understand exactly how this was working. Like, did they get sucked into the hole and turned upside down? And I know that, like, we're not really supposed to think about it that hard. It's supposed to be something that we don't understand. They don't understand it. That is why Ed was trying so hard to rationalize what was going on. Like, it's a weather storm or whatever. But it is hard as a reader when you are trying to picture just how horrifying this is. Because, like, to me, I was just like, the boat's upside down. That's what's happening. The boat is upside down. And they are like, but that also doesn't make any sense, because that would mean the ocean and the sky are still underneath of them. It was just very confusing to think about. And the fact that they were like, it's raining. Oh God, the moment they were like, it's raining, I knew. I knew. And then the stomach aches, I done knew. I knew what was gonna happen. I've watched Alien. I knew what was gonna happen next. Oh, yes. Yeah. It was confusing. I do think that the book here's I will say, sometimes, and this is probably a me problem, when it comes to horror novella, I don't always have the highest of expectations. And especially when it comes to writing, a lot of this stuff tends to be self-published or go through indie publishers, so it's not necessarily always I don't want to say high quality stuff, because it's clearly like the stories are very entertaining, but it's not always written to the best of its abilities. And I will say I was genuinely impressed with how well I felt the story was written. I think there was one mistake that I found where it's in the beginning where Eric is called Jamie. And that, to me, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be like a switch up thing. Eric and Jamie are actually just the same person. Because it was so early on, but I do think it was just an editing mistake. So I will say I was really impressed with the writing. The only thing was the pacing just was like, I honestly felt like I needed a break at times with the pacing, because it was just one thing after the next, after the next, after the next, and I didn't feel it felt like when you're on, like, an uphill climb, and the anticipation is nice in the middle, but if it just keeps extending, you lose a little bit of that anticipation, I feel. So it just, like, I needed, like, a moment where it's, like, that break, and then you get that, like, extra dip or something in it. Pulled into the hole? Yes, the worm stuff. I was like, "Do not drink that water!" Yes, yeah, full speed ahead. Yeah, I felt like I had to take breaks myself, because normally you wanna kinda read a novella in one sitting, I think, but I did feel I had to take breaks. I do think it would have been nice to have a little bit of a break to just explore their feelings, because we get a lot of Ed acting in the moment. Ed is worked up. He is worked up, and we get a lot of that, but we don't really see what the others are necessarily feeling. Yeah, Maddie's complaining of a stomach ache. And this is like, after the black hole has sucked them in. They're on the other side. And we do get that part of like they're freaking out, but Ed is already angry, and we just don't have a moment to like sit down and really be like, here's what everyone's feeling. This is how we got here. And I do think that it would have benefited from a little bit of that, instead of having 3 different scenes of weird fish falling from the sky. 3 separate scenes of weird fish falling from the sky. At this point, I'm like, I mean, how many more can come? Truly. It just felt like too many fish events, I guess. I could have done with at least, like, one less fish event falling from the sky, the whatever kinda deal. Um, yeah. Let's talk about Ed for a second. His son's friend phones him and says, "I killed a dude," and he just shows up. Yeah. Yeah, too many fish events. He does, and I also was like, Ed has killed a man before, clearly. Like, Ed has killed a man. That he knows what he's doing. It's also shows me that we have, we know at this point that Eric doesn't really have any he doesn't have really any close friends, but he trusts Maddie and Ed. So he did have, like, these were people that he felt he could trust in some way. It also shows that Ed had some respect for Eric, because you don't just, like, go along with this. This isn't just something that you do. Like, you have to have some level of respect. And I know to some degree that Ed just knew Maddie was, like, involved in it. And part of his reasoning was like, I have to help my son. But he shows up to the scene and he's like, "Maddie, did you do this?" And Maddie's like, "No, I didn't. I wasn't involved in this." And it could have ended there. He could have said, "All right, we're going to the authorities." It could have ended there. That could have been it. Yeah, it was not his first rodeo. Yeah, murder was, I feel like he definitely dealt with at least one other murder in his, I mean, we never know who Maddie's mom is or anything. It was like, "I'll protect my son, but also give him," yeah, he was, like, so hard on Maddie, and poor Maddie. I will say, I could not tell Maddie's age because I figured he was a grown man, as with everyone else, but then the amount of times the author just was like, "He's whimpering, he's sobbing, he's crying," and the descriptions used just made me feel like he was such a child in the moment. Like, there's a way to describe a man in distress, but I felt like it was, just really making him younger with the words that were described. And it made me feel like, we are supposed to feel for this father-son relationship. Like, we're trying to create a stronger bond here because we're thinking Maddie is, like, helpless. But Maddie has grown up with Ed and he's gone through the boating experience as Ed. So you would think that he would, in some respects, have a tough skin like Ed. Fletcher, listen, name drops didn't happen till like 75% through the book. We finally get everyone's full name. I was just rolling with it. Well, I think it was the same with we don't know Jamie's son's name, I don't think, till like much later in the book. He just keeps saying, "I think my son." And then he name drops Dylan. And then we find out that Eric's middle name is Dylan. And I think that was an interesting choice to be named after a brother that is like gone with the wind at any point in time, who has clearly not been a great influence on Jamie. It is interesting just how much Jamie looks up to Eric, given how bad of an influence that he was. Supposed to be mid-20s, 30s, but the reactions, yeah, he just felt young. Yeah, he definitely felt mentally younger than everyone else, and I don't know if it was the way that he was described or what. It was just very odd, in my opinion. I just had a really hard time gauging where he was at on the age scale and whether or not, like, how he was acting. I mean, clearly how you react in that moment is probably appropriate no matter what, but in the context of the story, I couldn't gauge if, like, what was happening was appropriate. It just felt he just felt very young. I don't know. And I guess maybe that was a choice to make us feel more for him. I don't know. It was weird because at the beginning, I felt like he was such a tough ass because, you know, him and Eric are giving each other shit. And then he quickly tumbles to the bottom for me. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a defining character, but immediately he is like dethroned by all the other characters. Yeah, Eric's ordering him to sit. Yes. And I do think that did show that, like, Eric clearly had some power over him to some degree. Like, Maddie probably also looked up to Eric in some fashion. And it just makes you wonder how much power Eric has in this moment and is is there reasoning for that? Like, clearly Eric was chosen by this entity of whatever, this other being. And does him having that power, like, is that part of it kind of deal? Like, clearly he has power over these people. I mean, he's killed a man, he's ordering Maddie to sit beside the man, then Ed comes and takes care of the body, and then Jamie is dragged into it, and, like, the only one who has any ties here is really Jamie at the end of the day, and even he hasn't seen Eric in years. So there should be some distance there, but Eric clearly just has this hold over people that somehow seems to work. I don't know, maybe it's just convenience. Ooh, do you think he purposely gave out? I don't know. I did wonder this because there is a moment where, you know, he's like, this was going to happen either way. It's just that you guys weren't supposed to be here. But I don't know if he meant the event itself or that moment. Because as we know, he's been waiting for this to happen. And I don't know if he knew it was going to happen at this time. So I'm not sure. Do I think Eric maybe purposely gave him bad drugs just because he hated the guy? Maybe. I could see that being more of like, yeah, he might have done that. But I don't think it was like he was trying to spawn the events that occurred after. I don't know if he could have predicted in any way, shape, or form of how that was going to happen. Because he even says, I think when the hole opens up and he goes, "So this is how it happens." Like he didn't even know. I also wanted him to explain, but it does say that he disappeared, and when he was there in the morning, he had no memory of what had happened or where he had been. But we know as an adult that he clearly knows something. He knows something is happening here. And he does say it's like a knowledge that he knows that has no words. And I don't know. The only thing I could put into that is like emotions. We can do our best to describe things with emotions. We can do our best to describe emotions, but at the end of the day, it's just something that you feel and you can't make someone else understand it at the end of the day. And that's the only thing I can compare it to, and that to me just doesn't feel right in this context. And I don't know if it was just a way to get out of explaining more into it or just to leave it up to the imagination. Yeah, he gave out the bad drugs, but then, yeah, because, yeah, I don't think Eric's a good guy. And I don't think we're supposed to think he's a good guy. So I do think he very likely could have, and I think the whole point was that they were trying to get out of there before anything happened. Kind of interpreted the murder being completely out of his control, like his actions were completely determined by the outside energy. Yeah, that makes sense to me. That's what I think, like, when Jamie is describing he has this good voice and this bad voice. You know, I was saying that I think part of it is that he is trying to make his situation bad because he knows this thing is coming for him. He doesn't if he makes it a good situation, you know, it's going to make it a lot harder when this happens. But it very well could be as well that this voice is this entity that's like, do the bad thing, do the bad thing, do the bad thing, because this entity clearly lives off of chaos and death. So it very well could have instilled this into him, this chaos and death into him, because that is what this entity wanted. Yeah, the fact when the hole showed up and he was calm, he knew something. And we all knew because we, of course, had the glimpse of the past of when he had disappeared, and so we knew that he knew something. His brutal death did suggest he didn't know he was gonna explode. I do think that, I think to some degree he thought he was gonna be welcomed. And I think we see at first he's in awe, right? And then the fish start falling out of the sky, and even then, like, he's kind of in awe. But the moment the fish goes to attack him, I think he realizes that he is not being welcomed back to something. They're taking him back, but he's not being welcomed back. And that's when we see a shift in his demeanor, and that's when he starts to become more panicked and more afraid. Where up to that moment, up until the fish begin to attack, the fish round number 1, might I add, he is like in awe up until that point. Like he's like, oh, this is gonna be a new coming, because he even says, they're making something new. This is gonna be something new. And I think he thinks up until this point, like, it's a good thing. This new thing is gonna be good. And then he realizes that, like, it's not. And I think he was fighting until he realized that, like, more fish were just gonna keep coming. Just more. He was like, yeah, he was the guest of honor. Yep. Yep. Yeah, until he realized he wasn't the guest of honor in a good way. Yeah. He was like, oh, yeah, it's gonna be, this is great. More fish. It is interesting. Because at first I was like, what a weird thing to be focused on fish. And, like, I guess it's fitting that they're fishermen, but what a weird thing to be focused on fish. But then, if you think of the idea of evolution, everything started in the ocean. And, like, so much of our ecosystem is based on the ocean, and that is the vast majority of the planet. And I was like, it actually makes a lot of sense to start with fish in the ocean. And the fact that these fish were meant just to come and kill. They just kill because then that leaves room for the moss or whatever to take over. I don't know why Jamie was like, this moss can't make it to Earth, because, like, it was already there. When he's like, this moss can't make it to land, it's already there. I don't know where you think it's gonna go. Like a placeholder for some alien force? Like, maybe it was just a waypoint marker for them to return and take over? Maybe. I don't know, because, like, clearly he was instilled with some knowledge. So I think that he felt maybe he was an insider to this knowledge, and that he was, like, kinda in on it. Like, he's kept this secret, and he's in on this secret because they clearly could touch down before, because the black hole was there before they got there. So they could clearly touch down. It's just that, like, maybe when he was like, a good point from before, I think that was it Becca had said, was that maybe this black hole opened and they had to get Eric there. He knows too much, kind of deal. I feel like in some way maybe he's been the eyes over the years. Maybe he was a way to basically look at this world, and that was how they knew over time that they were like, this is a world where there is enough chaos and destruction that we can take over. Maybe he was the eyes. We don't know if there's others as well that like were into this. We only see this point of view. And so I feel like maybe there was that voice that was like, you have to do this. You have to do this murder. Well, clearly he's gone to Hawaii. He's become a fisherman, which is not something he's ever been skilled at to do. Jamie's never even been on a boat. He doesn't know why Ed has done this, or why Eric has done this. He kills this man suddenly out of nowhere, and I think Jamie even says it's like he loses his control completely of himself. He kills this man. Then he calls Ed, who's a fisherman, and they're like, we have to take this body out on a boat. So then they're out in the middle of the ocean. So maybe it is that voice that was guiding them to that moment. The hole is already happening and they need Eric there. Just presumed him knowing that at some point the alien was coming back for him and he never wanted to connect to anything. Yeah. Yeah. I think it could be both. That maybe the voice was the entity because it clearly has some understanding of it. Maybe he knows that at times he doesn't have control, but I do also think that he has done things because he's not necessarily a good person. I don't think the voice was telling him necessarily to do anything and everything. I think some of it does come down to him and that he knew it was coming back and that's why like he wouldn't get close to anyone kind of deal. Yeah, he knew something but clearly did not have as much info as he thought he did. He knew something would happen. So, I think it honestly could be a mixture of both of that, like, well, clearly they've come from bad childhood, and we see that we know Jamie has gone there because he has had an outburst that makes him feel like his father, and he's gone to Eric because Eric embraces, his outrage and his excitement, but he does it in other ways. So, I do think that there is some behavioral things there that add up, but I do think maybe this voice also has an influence to some degree. And there probably are moments where he has made these choices because he knows this thing is coming back. He's pushed people away and he's moved around. But I do think there are some choices like maybe the moving and becoming a fisherman. Those might not have been fully up to him. Maybe they seemed in the moment or something. I don't know, it's just, like, the way that it all comes together could be quite clearly he was picked for a reason, and maybe it is that impulsive nature in him that he was picked. Who knew? Who knew Eric was such a complicated person? Here we just thought he was an asshole, who murders a guy and brings all his friends along, and then he gets sucked into the sky by a bunch of worms, you know? Who would have thought? I will say, I feel like this was all of my nightmares combined into one. You got space, you got the ocean, you got creepy fish falling from the sky. This is all my worst nightmare. Worms in your stomach? Hate it all. Hate it all. Right? I hope to never experience worm sky and fish rain. Like I would have died by a heart attack long before the fish even arrived, honestly. I would have been dead. Heart attack. Done. Weird octopus monster, right? Done for, dead, gone. The worm water, I'd be like, nope. So we all clearly knew when Maddie starts complaining of a stomach ache and then he starts drinking the salt water, we all knew. And it makes me interested as to how no one else knew. Like, no one was like, this is weird. Maddie, something's going on. And then at the end of the story, how quickly Jamie forgets of all that has happened. And like, I was so frustrated in that moment, I will say. Here we are getting this glimmer of hope that, like, Jamie's gonna make it, they've let him go, but now we know that Eric wasn't the harbinger of death. Jamie was. Eric had to go, but Jamie is now the one that delivers it. And then he forgets everything that has come up to this moment, other than the fact that he's like, I gotta kill the moss. And I knew the moment he was like, I lick the salt water from my lips, and I was like, no, no, no. And it made me frustrated because he does have a fear earlier in the book where he says, if I die, are they just going, is my family going to think I've abandoned them like my father did? And I kind of wish that would have come back around as I wish Jamie had realized what was happening instead of like acting like he didn't know why he was suddenly thirsty for all this. I wish Jamie had realized in that moment what was happening and had that moment of like, oh shit, they're going to think this. I kind of wish, because I think that is the fear the book is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about loss. It's supposed to be about the fear of how other people see you. It's supposed to be about the fear of being the worst version of yourself and people seeing that version. I think that is a worse fear than fish falling from the sky, but maybe that's just me. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the fact that Ed, Maddie, and Jamie just beat the shit out of all the fish. Yeah, they're just like, what is happening as they're just beating up all the fish? Too many worms and fish. Yeah, I was like, oh my, well, then I was like, oh my god, fish people are just gonna arrive. They're gonna be aliens, but they're gonna be fish. Like, they're just gonna be alien fish who are like, we do not come in peace, and then they just smack them down. They took on everything, and then the worms were coming down, and they were like, we're out. We can't do worms. We can kill a bunch of crazy fish, but we can't do worms. Oh my goodness. Think you would, but you wouldn't. I would die. I would die. I would die. I'd be dead. I'd be long dead. Hi, Keisha! Not the. I know the worms were just. Oh, they were something. I kind of wish that had come first. The fact that it was raining fish, I do think, took away from some of the scare factor for me. I think it would have been more terrifying. The alien fish are here! Maddie had a giant worm in him for so long. Truly so long. Well, I don't think it was giant to begin with. Clearly, as he continued to drink more of the rainwater, it was just like they were clumping together, making the big thing. Oh, and I mean, it would have bust out of him anyway, and like how wild that Ed was the one who like basically ends up killing him. Okay, I do have a question. I do have a question for you all who read it. Not Kyle. Not Kyle. That's Keisha. So there is a part where Ed says that Eric came to him and was like, he was like, you came to me, you wanted to start a new boating thing. You told me Maddie was incompetent, kind of deal. He's like saying all this. And then Eric is going, I didn't say that. And I would love to know how you all felt in that moment. Did you believe Ed or did you believe Eric? Yeah, when Ed was going off on Eric. And he's like, "You came to me, you were going to start a whole new thing without Maddie. You told me he was a waste of space, basically." And Maddie is crushed by this, clearly. Because he looks up to Eric. Eric has his power over him. And Eric is like, "Ed, that isn't true." Who would you believe in that moment? Okay, stream elements. I didn't ask. You think both. You think the entity maybe took over Eric in that moment of him saying that? Before this conversation, I believed Ed. I think he probably said something that Ed could interpret that way. Because of Eric's character, I wasn't inclined to believe him. Figured he was lying to Ed, so I still think Ed might have had some truth in it. Yeah, I feel like these are all, very solid thoughts. Because in the moment, I thought this is really weird to include, right? In the moment, I'm like, why is this something that, like, why is Ed bringing this up right now? I don't know if either could be fully believed. The entity had way more power than I originally gave it. Yeah. 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 So, yeah, as I'm reading it, I'm like, this is just something really weird to focus on in this moment. Something weird to bring up is Ed trying to distance Maddie? Like, in my original thoughts, I'm like, is Ed trying to distance Maddie from Eric? Is he just trying to find a reason to be mad at Eric? However, a few things weren't really adding up to me. We see how protective of Maddie Ed is. He loves Maddie with his whole being. He is willing to throw a dead body in the ocean, cover up a murder for Maddie. If you're telling me Eric came to him and told Ed that his son was a worthless piece of whatever, wasn't worth having around kind of deal, you're telling me that Ed would be okay in that moment of Eric saying this to him. That part, I was like, this doesn't add up. As protective as Ed is, I don't think he would sit around and let Eric talk about Maddie like this to his face. I think Ed was also trying to desperately make sense of what was happening. But then Eric is like, "No, I told you that we should have another ship, but that Maddie should be with me." Which to me also doesn't make any sense because we know Eric doesn't like anyone close to him. Yeah, I don't think Ed would have let Eric shit talk Maddie. Both are the most credible people and clearly butted heads. Maddie just gets pulled between Ed and Eric constantly. Yes, it's a constant battle between them. We have a father figure, but then we also have this guy that he looks up to. But then it's just like a weird conversation to include in this moment. And then part of me was like, what if Eric said both? What if he did go to Ed and say this, but it was a sleepwalking moment? And so maybe he doesn't fully understand what he said. But in the wake of the day, he's like, being more himself, and he wants Maddie there because he's human, and clearly he's going to want companionship at some point, and clearly he has come to enjoy Maddie. Maddie is his friend. And if, like, to some degree, he's like, yes, we need to have this ship, like, I need to be on this ship, he clearly has it ingrained to him that there needs to be another ship, and that he needs to be on it. But, like, at the end of the day, whose idea was it to have Maddie there or not there? I think Ed would have definitely spoken his mind in the moment, and it just doesn't seem that he seemed like he was just considering Eric's thing, and I think if he had, I don't know, if Eric had said something about Maddie, I don't think that Ed would have been as willing to jump onto this murder as he had been. So if Eric did say that stuff, Ed would know he is right, but not abandon Maddie. Yeah, that does make sense. As we've said that Maddie just seems mentally younger than the rest, like just his reactions and the way that he is. Maybe deep down Ed knows that Maddie isn't the best at the job and he would be willing to consider it. And maybe Eric had been like, from a business perspective, Maddie isn't this good at this and, whatever. And in that moment, when Ed is trying to distance Maddie from Eric, he is going to say the more hurtful of the variation of that. Energy was the boat trying to speed things up to get rid of Eric. Yeah, I think so. I think to some degree, Eric knew he had to be on this boat. He had to be on it. And maybe originally it was, I don't want Maddie. But then another version was, I wouldn't mind. Do you think Ed knows Eric sleepwalks? I don't know, because at some point I couldn't remember if Eric ever stops sleepwalking. So maybe Ed knows Eric was sleepwalking? Maybe. Possibly. Pull the characters apart, weaken their bonds to make it easier to dispose of them. Do you think it was a weird conversation? Maybe there was another way. Yeah, like to me, it was just a really weird conversation to bring up. And I was like, is this supposed to be a moment where is it just a tension bringer? Because if so, it's kind of a weird way to do it. Because clearly we've picked apart their characters and it doesn't really make sense to the characters in this moment. But also just like a part of it, because Ed and Eric had such different ideas of it, I was like, is this supposed to be a moment that sticks out? Is it supposed to stick out? Or is it just like a poorly written tension moment? Yeah, tensions rose wildly. It wasn't the murder that rose the tension. No, it wasn't the fact that a man was murdered or the fact that a black hole has entered and Eric is clearly cool, calm, and collected about it. It's the fact that Eric maybe didn't want Maddie on a boat with him. That is the line. I do think that there could have been a different way to do it. Absolutely, if that was the point. To me, it just seemed like a really weird conversation to include. Because I mean, Ed had so many other reasons that we got to witness for being mad at Eric up to this point, and that was the thing that he focused on. Just felt really weird. Not the fact that, like, you brought my son into a murder. Yeah, like, just your everyday Tuesday ocean sinkhole after a murder. No big deal. Right? Yeah, we've all been there. Murder, fine. Fishing. Eric is a meanie. Not on my boat. It was just like a very unusual thing. Like, he could have been mad at him for bringing his son into this murder. He could have been mad at him for influencing. And I do think we get a little bit of that later on, because he's like, did you give him something? He's like, did you give my son something? Which doesn't make any sense, because why would he give his son something to then be stuck on a boat with him and his very clearly muscular dad, mean muscular dad? Yeah, Ed was like, you're gonna need to chop up the body. Yeah. So many just like, but that was the pushing point, I guess. And I know part of him, I do think Ed was attempting to hurt Maddie in some degree and was trying to get him to distance himself, but like, yeah, Ed was too cool, calm, and collected. Ed is definitely killed, or at least covered up more than one murder. I didn't know how they were gonna get away with it, because then I was even like, at the end when Jamie was blowing up the boat on a beach that has houses on it, I was like, yeah, this is gonna pan out really well for you. You were last seen where 2 men died, and then 3 other men went missing, and you're burning the boat of 2 of the men who went missing. And also one was your brother who you supposedly don't have a great relationship with. I mean, from an outsider's point of view, they know that they loved each other, but from an outsider's point of view, they probably don't have the healthiest relationship. I was like, how is this gonna pan out? What? Yeah, he knew. Yeah, this book for, how many was it, like 160 pages? I don't even know if it was that. It's a lot going on. We joke about it, but murder just could have been the normal. That was probably the real job. And your alibi is you were killing fish. So you see, officer, there was this black hole that opened in the ocean. Would have blown himself up with a boat, but he just did not know he was filled. I just still don't understand. I don't understand how you go through all that you just did. You witness a man go through this exact situation and you don't recognize the signs that a worm is in you. That's why they needed a second boat to get rid of all the bodies. We fell into the hole, but we were actually in the sky, and then the fish were falling from the sky, and also they were like tentacly, and then there was worms, and the worms were coming together, and one was in one of them, and then more murder happened accidentally, and it was just a Tuesday. Truly wild. All right, I'm now going to tell you how I thought it was all going to end. We are clearly dealing with here's what my brain said when Jamie looked at the sky and he said it is a perfect circle. Everything is coming full circle. I looked at the fact that Eric and Jamie grew up together, but it was weird because they were always together, kind of deal. And then as they got older, there was a separation, but it doesn't seem like anyone is ever with them together. Then I was thinking about the fact that someone accidentally calls Eric Jamie at the beginning, and I thought that meant something. So I'm going based off of this. Then we find out that Jamie's son's name is Dylan. We also know that Eric and Jamie's father walked out on them at a young age. So when he said everything's coming full circle, I thought we were going to get this time thing that happened as well, where we find out that Jamie is the father and that he was the one who walked out because this event has occurred in a different timeline or whatever, and that when Eric is pulled from that moment, like he's witnessing this kind of deal, and that's why like the father has disappeared, because we find out that Jamie is the father, and then we're looking at it through the other timeline perspective. That was what I thought was when he was like, it's all coming full circle. I was like, circle of life, here we are. Oh, also the dead body comes back as Jesus. He literally floats down as Jesus. Can't tell me that was not symbolism for like the next coming. I'm pretty sure that was what it was supposed to be. It was like a mixture of evolution and the biblical next coming. Nothing bonds people like murder. Yep, you got to get rid of the accidental murder. Yes, please let's discuss AJ floating down like a marionette. Oh, yep. I know, Dilly. This is literally how I thought it was going to end. I thought it was here's the thing. For anyone who hasn't read any type of Chuck Palahniuk, this is the wild shit that Palahniuk writes about, and so maybe I've just been too warped by these super wild endings. So I was like, this is what's going to happen. And I did think we were gonna get like this light at the end of the tunnel with Jamie, and part of me, I couldn't tell if I was relieved or disappointed that Jamie essentially dies. I mean, that is the assumption that Jamie dies. The worm explodes out of him at some point, and that is how the ocean does its thing from that point on. So I couldn't tell at that point if I was relieved or not, because part of me wanted to have that closure of him not being the father who abandons his family. But another part of me was like, that that's a happy ending. And we don't want a happy ending. We want this shit to be fucked up as possible. It was a wild ending. Listen, I thought the evidence was there. It was making sense in my mind, so let me tell you. I was flabbergasted when that didn't happen. I have not read Sister Made a Monster. It's on my list. Oh, it's okay. Well, if it's fucked up and wild, I would love to read it. Like Cabin in the Woods, but this book, I wish Jamie was just smart. Yes, it was weird because I feel like Jamie didn't feel dumb, but there were so many times where I felt like something was obvious. Like when he is like, the constellations in the sky. My brother is drawing these weird dots, that look like constellations. And then also he disappeared into the sky one night. And then here I am, and there's the sky underneath my feet, and there's these constellations in parentheses, by the way. Using parentheses in writing, in like professional writing, is kind of weird in my opinion, but to each their own. When he's like, which I don't know why I know so well. I was just like, Jamie. It almost, in a way, felt like an insult to the reader when the author used parentheses to point something out that was like a nod back to something, because I also want to be like, this book isn't that long. I can't remember things very well, but I can at least remember things that happened at the beginning of this book while I'm reading it. And it felt like a bit of an insult to me as a reader to not catch on those things, but I'm like, we are not all as dumb as Jamie. I just wish that in the moment he had realized that something was up and found a way. Like, if he had not if he had not drank the salt water, could he have killed? Could he have killed the worm? Like, I feel like there was other ways. Could he have immediately gone, instead of drinking the salt water, could he have immediately gone for help? And, like, things could have ended differently. He just was like, oh my god, my stomach hurts and I'm so thirsty. Where have I heard this before? I don't know. Let me just shove my face into the ocean and drink it. Did the writer forget they already told us that? Yeah. Just trying to think, at least I'm smarter than Jamie. Should that be the slogan for the book club from now on? At least I'm smarter than Jamie. Yeah, the worms seem to grow bigger with salt. I also think it needed the salt to survive. It's clearly like a saltwater organism. And they were struggling on the boat to like stay alive in the air. Yes, please. At least I'm smarter than Jamie. That'll be on the t-shirts. At least I'm smarter than Jamie. Friday, what was your predicted ending? Did anyone else have any predicted endings or any other gripes? Because I've been here for an hour now discussing the book. But I would love to hear if anyone else had any predicted endings or any other gripes that we should talk about. Passive perception isn't great. Yeah, like, I enjoyed the book from his point of view. It made the most sense, in my opinion, from his point of view. But sometimes I was like, Jamie, figure it out. Yeah, I think he could have starved the worm or survived longer, at least to like, I don't know, it would have kicked things off because I mean, clearly they know about it because we get like the research notes as the ending that are like, we are seeing these crazy fish happening. I will type a full unexpected aliens to show up, which kind of, yeah, I mean, like the ribbons, and I guess the whole point is that like we don't know what the entity is. It's is it man-made? Is it extraterrestrial? Like, I think the idea is that like there's a lot of imagery that points to like extraterrestrial, you know, the beam from the sky and like weird gravity forces. But Eric also mentions machines. And so to me, I'm like, so is that like human made? But like clearly not. That was just gonna be about realizing someone you think you know isn't who they are, and so I thought as they were going on the boat, Eric and Ed would turn on Jamie. Oh, and like offer him up? Yeah, and he would be thrown into the ocean with the body. And then the hole turned up. Turned up and it was all over from there. I did kind of think to some degree that it was going to be a bit of like a shipwreck book. At the very beginning, I was like, is this going to be a shipwreck book? Was a classic flying saucer? Yeah, it seemed like it. Didn't enjoy the ending of a scientific document, but yeah, it seemed like a bit like just a flying saucer. Obvious Eric was with his drug handoff. It's such a small issue, but I was like, bro, everyone knows it's right. Right. The moment that he walked over to clearly a guy that he hates and then was like doing the old pool table pocket. Oh, a space world eater? Yeah, well, when they were describing the black hole as a mouth, I'm like, "Oh, this is like this. They're about to be sucked into a creature." This stream is not also live on Twitch. No, it's not. Go away, stream elements. Figured it was going to be more directly Lovecrafty. Yes, I thought there was going to be like this big oceanic monster or something. They were going to be sucked into the belly of it. Tentacles came out of the sky, and I was like, you know what tentacles normally mean? I know. Stream Elements keeps telling lies today. What's going on? What is happening? But yeah, it's I think part of me would have preferred a big fish over a bunch of little fish falling from the sky. I think that would have been really interesting, honestly. Also, would you recommend this book? Yes, I would. I actually really enjoyed it. I tend to gripe a lot about books even when I enjoy them. I think it's sometimes a lot easier to talk about the things that you don't like versus the things that you do like, but I really enjoyed dissecting characters. Eric's character. I thought that was really fun. I got confused with what it was describing, yeah. Fake fish. No! No! I don't want any more fish. There's always a bigger fish. So true. Maybe think about things differently. Yeah. The best part of a book discussion. Yeah, I think I was fully convinced that like Eric didn't when Jamie's talking about the voice, I just thought, you know, to some degree that Eric just was doing bad things to do them because he knew there was nothing worth living. But when Becca brought up the fact that like the entity probably had a say in this voice, you know, that to me I hadn't considered, and that also makes just as much sense. He seemed really interested in what I was telling him, offering theories as well. Yeah. Left me with a lot of questions. These are I feel like it's the best kind where you leave and like you have to sit and think about them because one, I know that the ending to some degree is kind of finished, completed, but it does leave you with a lot of questions of what is to come and also what could have happened. But also I love horror novellas because they do often leave a lot of things to the imagination. And so there is a lot of like time for you to think about in those moments where not everything is explained. So like the discussion that we've had of like what is the entity and like what was Eric's involvement and what happened to Eric as a kid, and like he clearly has known something but he doesn't, and like there are a lot of moments to question because you're not given all the answers. It's not a book I would have picked up on my own, and I do want to read more outside of my usual genre. Yeah, I love horror, but I don't normally pick up, I guess, like the cosmic sci-fi stuff. So I honestly thought I was just getting a book about the ocean, a scary book about a big creature in the ocean. And so I was pretty surprised, and I have no idea what to expect. So this month we're reading Them. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. And I have no clue what to expect. I don't know if anyone has started it yet. Um, which I think it's paranormal, and that's probably more up my alley of what I normally read. Little did we know the creature in the ocean was Eric all along. And the weird fish. And lots of weird fish. And the worms. And the flying saucer. Also, Jamie did talk about the fact that Eric had that lump on the back of his head, and did like the mom never look into this lump on the back of his head? All the times he complained about the headache and his mom never looked at the lump on his head? Theo gives a light commitment to read. Yeah. Got you on a reading slump. I love that. Sometimes you just need, I love novellas when I need a win, because you can read something that can be fulfilling, but you can read it quickly and it feels like such a win. Yeah, the lump, it just exists. Like the lump was there for a reason, but we just don't know. We just don't know what the lump was there for. Instead of a big novel commitment, yeah. Because I clearly can't commit to a novel right now to save my life. It was another fish. You have caught alive. We are probably nearing the end of this live. This is just a book discussion live. Lump just exists, just like me. So it was a probe. It had to be, I assume it had to be something that has to do with the fact that, like, maybe the honing device to figure out where he is. But yeah, I think in the end they were learning through Eric what humans were like and what the earth was like. Yep, can't wait for a bunch next time a bunch of fish show up in a future book and we're all gonna go, at least we're smarter than Jamie. At least we're smarter than Jamie. Hi, Sam. It will be lovely. I think that's really all I have to I literally brought up a list of, like, book club questions because I was like, "Oh my god, what am I gonna talk about?" And I talked for, over an hour just about all the things. You wanna see my face? Here it is. I got a new wig on today. I need to run some powder over it because it's still a little shiny, but it was, yeah, it was like a sci-fi trope that readers were supposed to, it's, yeah, like a kinda like the typical sci-fi tropes. Kinda wanna read the book. It is, I will say it's a fast-paced read. It's interesting. I guess how would everyone rate it? I am a 1 to 5 scaler. I think I would rate it, mm, I wanna say a 4. I think possibly a 4. I do not think it would be higher than a 4 for me. but I want to say it would be a 4 for me. Like, I really did enjoy the experience overall, and I've enjoyed our discussion. Pizza cat! I'm trying to see, if there was any other questions. It's so weird to ask, like, what were some of your favorite scenes? Because in horror, I feel like talking about your favorite scene is, like, exposing yourself a little bit. I think I also gave it a 4, so it seems like, I mean, it's a pretty solid read. It seems, if a lot of us were giving it around a 4. Ooh, would you wanna see a movie adaptation of this? Probably. I would watch a movie adaptation of this. I feel like we've had a few that are pretty similar, like, obviously, it's got a lot of sci-fi alien elements. Like, the point of leaving with great questions, yeah. 3.5, yeah, I was thinking like a 3.5 or a 4 for me. Octopus appeared, and so Ed, Maddie, and Jamie just go wild and attack it. Yeah, if I saw an alien octopus, I would freak out. Absolutely. Might watch it as a short Netflix special. Yeah, just something. I don't know. Like, I feel like I would watch it. I feel like it would be kind of low budget horror that I would absolutely watch. Always fan cast when I read. Did you have any particular fan cast for this cast of characters? I think we kind of talked about, like, if you could improve, what would you do, how you would rate it. I think we've kind of, in some way, without asking general book discussion questions, I feel like we've hit a lot of the topics that most people talk about. I would just watch it for the fish rain. I'm just imagining, like, the fish slapping down. Like, what would you even do the moment you see a fish slap down on deck and then it was like, I was fish number 27, yeah. I was the guy in the alley who asks if everyone's okay the 3rd time. I was that guy. The octopus! Oh my god. Love that. Yeah, I wanna see the crazy looking fish, and I know they kept describing it as, like, deep sea type creatures, which, to me feel alien, so that makes sense. Definitely feel like a fascination between space and deep sea. It is interesting, though, how the aliens would know about the deep sea. Did they go down there? Were they exploring the deep sea? Or did they study evolution of Earth? Like, how did they know? How did they know? Or were they just combining whatever looked the most wild that they could find? Or maybe it was like when that black hole was created, it just sucked up all the things in the black hole and, like, did all that. Unidentified submarine objects are a thing? Are they a thing? Unidentified submerged? I did not know. I didn't know this. I do think that the worms being like threads and, like, AJ coming down with the threads. Wait, AJ could be like a short form for, like, how there's like AD and BC? AJ could be like after Jesus. I think I'm thinking way too far into this now. Cause it seemed like just a biblical moment, like the threads of life and the threads of time and like the threads of all that. Yeah, let's just find the weirdest shit and just throw it at the humans. Yeah, weird ocean stuff is fascinating. Try to make copies as best as it could. Yeah, I don't want to go to the deep. There's two places I never want to travel, and it's to into the ocean and into space. So, nope, it's canon now. After Jamie, AJ, after Jamie. That's what it stands for now. That's it. There was the time before Jamie, and then there was the time after Jamie. Yeah, I do not belong in the ocean, I sure do not. I wanna look at weird stuff in the ocean. Oh, yep, mhm, mhm. There it is. You know, I don't know, because, like, some authors I feel like we're in English class when the teacher is like, "But what do the color of the curtains signify?" And maybe that's just been ingrained in my brain where I'm like, "Everything needs a meaning." And it's probably not that deep. But maybe it is. Maybe this author has also been that person that's like, "Everything needs a meaning." The year of our fish 2024, AJ. Oh, yeah, there was that plane that got sucked in. Yeah, I don't know what the point of the plane was, now that I'm thinking about it, and actually, when they originally were talking about the first set of fish that were raining down, I thought it was the plane parts, 'cause at that point, AJ's shoe had rained down, and I thought the plane parts were raining down, and I was like, "Oh, shit, they're gonna get impaled by plane parts," but no, instead they were gonna get impaled by a fish tail. Also, yep, no, yeah, I do love, if anyone loves, deep sea horror, Into the Drowning Deep is probably one of the best horrors, as well as deep sea horrors I have ever read. Absolutely fascinating. Why does it need to be a meaning? I feel like a lot of us were like that, though. Like, the curtain colors probably didn't have a meaning. Thought it was the government? Maybe. Yeah, the student that thinks that everything needs a meaning, yeah. Yeah, what was the plane doing? Fish were flying the fish were flying the plane. Oh, the Bermuda Triangle. Yeah, they when they were talking, they made a joke of like, there's never been a black hole in the middle of the ocean. I was like, I don't know. Don't get the Bermuda Triangle people involved. They'll probably tell you there has been a black hole in the middle of the ocean. The sea isn't safe and also the air isn't? Maybe? I mean, I guess that could be one way to explore that. I don't know. I feel like using like a bird would have been more realistic. Sometimes you just need there to be curtains. Yep. It's really good. Pizza Cat. Also, Mira Grant, who is also Shannon McGuire, they write under Mira Grant for a few horror projects, but Shannon McGuire slash Mira Grant is just one of the best writers I feel like out there in the fantasy world, just overall. But yeah, it's just I don't know. I don't really get now that I kind of Friday. I kind of forgot all about the plane. But that does make sense. Maybe it was they got this weird anomaly on their radar, and so they sent this plane to investigate what this like anomaly was. Anomaly. Maybe that's what was there, and we just because we're not government officials, like we wouldn't know. Deaf characters who are scientists and lesbians. Yeah, I wouldn't have questioned why a bird was there. Yeah. Getting new books. There you go. I'm trying to think of what else I would recommend. This did kind of give me not quite the same, but if you're also looking for a little bit more deep sea horror, but that is more literary fiction, I did recently read Our Wives Under the Sea. And that was it was really good, but it is very much a different style of writing. So if you are looking for more of like a discussion of like weird entities and like weird things that happen with the deep sea, I think that was, and it's also a shorter read. It is just a more complicated read in my opinion, and it's not, the writing style definitely won't be for everyone, but it was good stuff. All right, friends. It's been an hour and a half, and I do want to try to keep our book discussions shorter on the shorter side of what I normally talk. So, and it is Mother's Day, so I plan on going to spend the rest of the day with my mama. But if anyone has any last thoughts or things or whatnot to add, let me know. We'll discuss them quickly. We are reading them this month, and I want to say our next discussion is on June 9th. Yep. I'm planning for the second Sunday of every month, June 9th. I'll try to have a live listed before then because I keep forgetting that you have to do that on YouTube. So that anyone, yep, they'll always be at noon. Unless I will let you know ahead of time if they wouldn't be. It's just that is the time that works the best for me and seems to hit a decent amount of time zones. What did the fish rain represent? Well, fish are using like a biblical representation, right? Maybe there was like a biblical reference there that I might have missed. I forgot to list it ahead of time. That was my bad because I forget that. So I'm used to Twitch where you have a schedule that's listed for you, like when you're going to be live. And I always forget that YouTube doesn't have that. You have to do it ahead of time. So, what is the next book's author? Hang on. Let me get it. Them. I know I have it saved. It is by McKay Watson. I'm definitely mispronouncing this. So I need to look up a pronunciation guide of how to say that. Also, all of the books that I have found, at least for the first few months of Tiny Terrors, are Kindle Unlimited books, or should be. I don't know if that's a regional thing, but I did try to find pretty much all horror novellas that are Kindle Unlimited. At some point we might run out, but I'll try to keep it as accessible as possible. So, yeah. Stay the fuck out of, yeah, just don't go in the ocean. We don't want the ocean. I don't need no fish. I don't need none of it. That's what it represents. All right. They're different. Oh, this one. Okay. All right. I was going to say, if not, they should be pretty inexpensive. And I'm sure you can find copies online as needed. So, yeah, most of them I looked up were pretty inexpensive. So, but yeah, thank you so much for joining the first book discussion. I wasn't too sure how this was going to go, and clearly I talked in a hamster voice for the first 3 minutes. So, next time we're going to try not to do that. And we're going to try to talk in a normal voice the whole time. So, it was fun. I really enjoyed talking about all the theories and all the fun stuff with you all. It was a good time. Hopefully, them will be just as good. If not, hopefully, we'll have a fun time reading it. So, thank you guys so much for hanging out. If you are a mama, happy Mother's Day. I appreciate you. And the beings that rely on you for care appreciate you. And thank you for all you do. I the hamster voice was something. It was something. If only I had known. If only. I know Stream Elements is being naughty. Thank y'all for chatting. Thank you all. I appreciate you. And I will see you soon. Okay, bye.